food chain. No, what's the food? No, what's the...
You're top of the food chain, yeah.
We're the top of the food chain. It's food chain.
If you're a lion, you sleep on your back with your balls out in the sun, right? But if you're a parrot and you're on the bottom of the food chain, you sleep while you're wide awake and one eye's looking around, making sure nobody's coming to eat you.
Here's what I've never understood.
Yeah.
The lions can do it, and it's just fine. You're the top of the food chain.
No one's going to mess with the lions.
Quiet, please.
I do it one fucking time in Hawaii, and I can never go back to that resort ever again. I don't understand. I understand. Just trying to get a little sun on my balls. They spend all day inside. I just want a little color on the scrotum,
Sure.
and now I can never go back to the Waikiki Wyndham Resort ever. Sir, I know they call it a blowhole, but that's not what you do with it.
3,
I didn't know.
2.
The Apple Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, episode number 49. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm the guy with COVID.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time we'll look at music. All of it.
I mean, that's a lot of music. Are we going to cover all of it today? Because I feel like it's only a half an hour show.
It's World Monkey Day. Monkey Day aims to educate people about the threats faced by primates in the wild, such as habitat loss, hunting, and the illegal pet trade.
They should probably warn them about Elon Musk, too.
By raising awareness, Monkey Day encourages people to support organizations working to protect primates and their habitats. If you don't know of such an organization, may we recommend the World Wildlife Fund. There's a perfect time to sneak in an end-of-year donation to an amazing cause. We'll put the link in the show notes. How's your week going?
It always starts out well, and then you do this intro, and then I start thinking about Musk killing monkeys, and now I'm just sad. As I mentioned earlier, I've got the COVID again.
I'm so sorry.
You know, it's actually in some ways been more pleasant than not.
What?
Well, I'm recently boosted, so my symptoms have been basically non-existent.
Oh, yeah.
I've had like a mild cold, not even...
What a massive difference that makes.
Oh, geez. It's been like the softest cold I've ever had. Well, I'm sure my genetics have something to do with it, too, but I get to spend time away from my kids because I have to. I can't be with them. I'm sick. So that's been, what's the opposite of terrible again?
They video call you?
I did. I set up Amazon Echoes for them, and they fight to see who gets the video call me to talk to me. It's the cutest thing ever. Neither of them understand how these communications work. They like to just be on the other side of the room yelling at me into their Echo, but it's still pretty funny.
I love it.
But my wife has been out of town, so I've had to manage the children a bit here and there.
With face mask, I hope.
With face mask, yeah, I've been masked up, and let me tell you, showering with two little boys is already fun enough, let alone when you're wearing a face mask and begging your children not to splash you in the face.
Oh, sure.
To get the mask wet. Yeah, this has been my day for the past week. But I'm better now. I still have a faint line, so I'm still wearing a mask, but I can come out of isolation.
Faint line on the COVID test.
Yes, my COVID test is very, very faint. So my viral load is low, but still non-zero.
When you have any kind of line, does that mean you can communicate the virus?
Well, in theory, you've got some virus in you still. This is on an antigen test. In theory, you've got some virus in you still. So in theory, yes, you could communicate said virus.
Okay.
And in theory, and it depends on how sensitive it is. There's all sorts of shit that goes into this. But in theory, when the line is clean, then you are good to go.
And then you won't infect anyone.
In theory. But you could still test positive on a PCR test for months because that's just showing some of the DNA of the virus still floating around your system. Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited to get back to something normal. I think I'm a couple days away.
Tired of living in your office, are you?
No. I mean, I really wouldn't mind to have like a good solid 10 days.
Your office is really nice.
I know, it's really nice. It's full of shit right now, but it's an office/media room. So I got to watch a bunch of TV, as I mentioned, and yeah, just generally have a good time. And I got to do some fun stuff for this show, which you'll find later as we get into my segment here shortly. But I made a playlist on Spotify for the first time, a Nonsense First, to support the segment that I'm doing.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that you can listen along at home. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'll put it in the show notes.
And it has all the songs ever recorded?
It has all of them. Yeah, that's the segment. The segment is all of the music. And then we're going to start with the A's. Today we're just going to start with the A's.
You wouldn't think that Spotify would let you do that.
Yeah, it turns out they're hurting for revenue, so they're fine. I paid an extra $3 for it.
This will be the part where you ask me how my week's going.
Yeah, I was about to do that. Okay, look, COVID hasn't killed all the brain cells. I still know how this fucking show works. All right, I say stuff, you laugh. You say stuff, I gloss over it. How's your week going?
Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger, so my week's going just fine. Thank you very much. A $700 million contract over 10 years. In a related story, a hot dog at Dodger Stadium is now $400.
Oh, so the price went down. Oh, how great.
The price went down.
Oh,
yeah,
how
it's a little
nice.
cheaper.
Shohei came in and said, look, we want this to be more like Costco. No $600 hot dogs. It's like they're propping up the Dodgers with hot dog sales.
The interesting part of the deal is, of course, that Ohtani has structured the deal to pay himself $2 million a year for 10 years for salary cap purposes and then pay out the remaining $680 million. So it does not affect the Dodgers' salary cap.
But in 2033, they're fucked.
Can't even have ushers.
Sure.
Don't have nothing. But the amazing thing is that MLB allows this.
Yeah, I'm not close close enough to the sports and how these caps work and all of this stuff, but this does seem like they're kind of playing within the rules, but not the spirit of the rules.
Magic Johnson had a deal where he got $25 million from the Lakers, but it was paid out over 25 years, $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Whether he played for the team or did not play for the team, he got $1 million a year, and it obviously made it so that he was well under any salary cap. You would think they would have seen that and said, what we ought to do is whatever the contract is worth, whatever the value is, let's divide that over the number of years and just apply that much of the contract every year.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I think it's a good idea. But to be fair, division is hard.
Division is hard.
You got to carry the one sometimes.
I hadn't realized there was going to be math.
That's tough, especially long division. What is a quotient really? Where does it even go? I don't know. A divisor? No idea.
We should let our listeners in on the fact that we are both moving very slowly today. You already mentioned this, but I got vaxxed on Monday for RSV, the flu, and the latest COVID booster, and I'm still kind of a disaster. Meanwhile, as you have said, you actually have COVID.
Yep.
So we're both kind of struggling with low energy, but we will soldier on.
You just outed yourself in your age, by the way, by saying that the RSV booster. That only goes to the old people.
Yeah, you got to be 60 years old to get it. I have a cousin, by the way, who has RSV.
Oh, really?
She's 58.
Oh, geez.
Virus didn't bother to check her ID. RSV should have said, nope, you're too young. I can't infect you. Apparently, that's the cutoff. You got to be at least 60.
That's how RSV works. Have you gotten your shingles booster?
I have had my shingles, the new shingles. There's two. There was one that was from years and years ago.
Old shingles.
And there's a new one.
New
I've had both parts of the recent shingles.
The few people I know that have gotten shingles later in life say it is terrible.
I had a friend who had it for 6 months.
Oh, man.
Yeah, just as
horrible.
bad as you can possibly imagine. So, and then we had another friend who got shingles who lives kind of by us. And so we thought, oh, you know what? Let's get that shingles. Let's get that shingles
let's get that
back.
shot. Yeah.
We raced to our local CVS
coughing
to get
on
that
your doorknob.
Let us get to our headlines. Tesla recalls nearly all vehicles sold in the U.S. to fix system linked to Autopilot. I'm so tired of this show featuring Elon Musk in so many stories.
We should fire our producers.
Tesla is recalling nearly all of the vehicles it sold in the U.S., more than 2 million across its model lineup, to fix a defective system that's supposed to ensure drivers are paying attention when they use Autopilot. I'm mystified. We have been saying forever this Autopilot doesn't work.
Yeah.
This is L2. It does not work. You cannot not pay attention.
It does what L2 does. It just doesn't do not what L2 does.
But they don't advertise it at L2. They're putting the words Autopilot on it. Autopilot, you'd think of the L5.
Which is part of the problem.
The recall comes after a 2-year investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration into a series of crashes that happened while the Autopilot partially automated driving system was in use. Some were deadly. The agency says its investigation found Autopilot's method of ensuring that drivers are paying attention can be inadequate and can lead to foreseeable misuse of the system.
Now I find this hard to believe. Isn't this just like when you go to sign up for a website and they're like, do you agree to all these terms? And you just say, yes, I swear. Isn't that basically what this is?
Without reading it?
You just, little checkbox comes up and they're like, do you promise to look at the road? And you're like, yes, of course.
Do you really, really, really promise?
I'm not going to be in the back seat taking a nap while my car drives down the road.
But I think if you turn on something called Autopilot, that means you get to go take a nap in the back.
Oh, yeah, good point. Because if it's Autopilot, you would think it would automatically pilot the vehicle and you don't have to do anything.
Sure.
You can just sit in the back and play Wordle.
Take a nap, read a book.
So this recall covers like everything.
Ys, S's, 3s, X's, all of their models between October 5th, 2012 and December 7th.
I like that you purposely didn't put that into the sexy order that he intends it to be. I appreciate that. What's curious about this, I read a little bit.
It's a software update. You don't have to take your car in. It just updates.
And so the folks that sort of, I think, brought this to light and were the most vocal about this being problematic have said, look, we're not really fixing the underlying problem. We're not putting cameras on the driver to know if they're paying attention.
Right.
We're not doing object detection in the road. But it seems like this is a calculated decision by the NHTSA to say, well, at least now we get them to do something now, as opposed to a bigger fix that might take years of them.
Better to do something than nothing.
Wrangling with them.
Maybe changing the name from Autopilot, like every other electric car company that sells L2, and they call it driver assist.
Hey, look, they can call it whatever they want. Okay.
He's saying they have a First Amendment. They have a First Amendment right to call it whatever they want. No, you don't.
I know.
No, you don't.
Literally, I'm being tongue in cheek on this. They're literally claiming, Tesla's literally claiming that they have a First Amendment right to call it full self-driving. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. You can't
It's just not true.
Yes, you can't say like, oh, look, if you push this button, the car will take you to the moon. Please buy it. And then you push the button, they're like, just kidding. It doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that. Why would you think it would do that?
We just said that. It doesn't really. But the California DMV is getting pretty pissed off about this, right?
Oh, yeah, they're quite upset, and rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, and I love Tesla's response to this. So the California DMV has said, look, this is false advertising. You need to stop doing it. And Tesla's defense is, well, you've been doing it for 7 years. You haven't bitched about it before, so it must be okay. It's like,
I'm not taking Musk's side on this. Believe me, I'm not taking Musk's side on this.
Yeah.
But what did take the DMV so long?
have you been to the fucking DMV?
That's not
Jesus
the modern
Christ,
DMV.
I'm waiting in line right now. I've been here for 3 weeks.
You sign up for your appointment online. You go in. You got a 10-minute window. They are fast. It's great. Unless you're doing weird things, it's really quick.
Do you think that's how this works with the Tesla lawyers in this lawsuit? They have to show up with the DMV attorneys and they're like, now serving
within a 10-minute window?
C-123. They're like, oh, that's us. Come on, Bob. No, but their argument is you've let this sit for too long and now it's not okay.
Obviously, that's no argument because they're still selling cars.
course.
Every time they sell a car, they restart the clock on whatever the statute of
your
limitations
expectation is the DMV are fucking experts on this. Maybe they just gave you the benefit of the doubt when you released it and called it full self-driving. They're like, well, it's going to be that soon.
Clearly, they did give them the benefit of the doubt, but the DMV should have actually, I think, been quicker to act on this.
Aren't there also like a mountain of people that are pretty grumpy, and I think rightfully so, just for spending 10 grand or 10 grand plus
15 grand
to pre-buy? Yeah, I think it was like anywhere from 8 to 10, right? It ramped up over or 8 to 15. Yeah, it ramped up over time to buy this full self-driving that never came. And they're like, well, fuck you. You promised me this thing that never came. So I can understand the DMV being like, well, it's beta right now, but maybe it'll be out in a couple of years. And then 9 fucking years later, they're like, so it turns out that's vaporware.
Except no, because people are actually using it, even though they call it beta.
No. I understand.
It doesn't work.
Of
that
course.
doesn't give them the license to use things.
But I'm just saying,
work.
like, if you want to throw the DMV some rope, and I'm not in the business of defending the DMV at all, if you want to throw them some rope and just be like, well, you did call this thing beta and you were going to complete it at some point soon-ish, that could be part of why they gave you 7 years.
Right. After it hit enough telephone
of people
poles.
running into shit and killing themselves.
Although you should, the reverse should be how it works. You should first have to prove that it works before you can.
But I agree with you on that. One, how do you prove that it works? There is no test for this, or maybe there is now, but there certainly wasn't. 10 years ago.
Drive around and watch it not crash. Get a certain number of miles.
Yeah,
on it, but once you've got 2 million miles or 10 million miles, whatever the number is, without crashes, maybe you've got
like
something
things
that
like
works.
tail lights. We know they're supposed to have a certain number of lumens, and if they don't put out that many lumens, you go, well, it fails the test. I don't think that existed, and maybe now again it does. I doubt that it does as a test for self-driving. Again, maybe now actually it does because California's been pretty.
Well, it did with Waymo because Waymo's been logging miles in those Waymo cars, those self-driving Waymo cars for years, and under pretty careful supervision.
I don't think that was a thing where they go, if you want to be a L2 car or an L4 car, whatever, here in California, you have to do these things. I think that this has been developed and Tesla just happened to be super early. I'm not saying this lets them off the hook at all.
That's true. I'm sure the regulation does follow, by violation of the law.
For sure.
We crash a lot of cars and then we say, hey, we ought to have a regulation.
Well,
that absolutely happens,
yes,
for sure.
But now let me challenge what you said there. Can we please crash those in a more controlled setting? I'd prefer for that to happen than them just plowing through people on, Venice Boulevard.
Crash a few cars and then stop the whole thing and warn people this could be taken away at any moment. This is
sure. And like that's what your crack legal team came up with. It was like something between it took you a long time to respond and First Amendment.
But he's high, so he's saying, "Oh no, it's a First Amendment issue," and he's screaming at them, and they're like going, "Well, our check's clear, so let's go ahead and say whatever he wants us to say." That's also a problem with our legal system is there's nothing. None of this splashes back on the lawyers for spewing out the idiocy of their clients. The California DMV is seeking a suspension or revocation of Tesla's manufacturer license. They literally want them to stop making cars.
Did not know they had the power to do that. That is kind of crazy. When I first read this, I thought they were like,
I don't know if they do they?
I don't know. When I first read this, I thought it was the California DMV is saying like, we don't want you, like, we're not going to let you sell cars in California anymore. Right. And then I read it a little closer and I was like, no,
it's not
what
not
it
just
says.
selling.
So I'm sure this is going to become a, how terrible is California? Let's go make all our cars in Texas and they'll just move it over to Texas and make all the car killing machines there.
Although think about how many Teslas sell in California.
Man,
probably
it's got
the
to be a
bulk of
lot
them sell here.
and
most of those have to be in Southern California and San Francisco too.
Yeah. From SF and LA. I mean, that's got to be, we're 10% of the U.S. population as it is. And for folks that are buying EVs, I got to believe we're way more than 10% of the population of folks that are buying EVs.
There's a bigger issue here in that having someone who is running a car company, who is making the bottom line decisions, the fundamental decisions of what goes into a car and doesn't go into a car, having that person who clearly has a drug problem. How's that work? How can that possibly
you say drug
work?
problem. I think he has a drug solution. Just ketamine. He's just like the Oprah of ketamine. Just everybody gets ketamine.
Well, he certainly thinks it's a solution. If you saw the Andrew Ross Sorkin interview at Deal Book, or
my good friend Jonathan
Ross Sorkin, my good friend Jonathan, no, he has. If you're going to get loaded before you go out in front of the public at Deal Book, imagine what you're doing before you go into the office on Wednesday.
Good point. Do you think he's more high, the same high, or less high on Wednesday in the office? Can't be sure.
I have no idea, but whatever it is, this is not someone who should be making life and death car manufacturing decisions.
Or at least share the ketamine with the rest of us. I would say one of those two things. Like if there's a new Tesla Model K and it comes with a little ketamine dispenser in it, I'm not going to say no, but that might be my first Tesla. Right? I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know if they're looking for product design guidance, but I would help share that with them.
Okay, now for the headlines. Up next, CJ is going to talk about music. All the music.
Specifically, only things that you can play on the sitar.
Okay, well, that's got to be
about
half the music, right?
Yeah, the sitar, and then next week we'll do the harp.
Great.
And we'll have everything covered.
Fantastic.
It's the new sitar harp episode.
Let's go.
Remember what your first concert was?
My first concert generally, or my first musical concert?
Well, I was thinking your first musical concert, but you can start with generally. What was generally your first concert?
My very first concert was Martin Mull, the comedian.
Yeah.
At the CSUS gym, which was spectacular.
What is CSUS?
So good. Cal State Sacramento. I don't remember what
University of Sacramento? Cal State University Sacramento?
Like
okay.
Yeah.
I believe
and
you.
he was fantastic. He was great. But that was my first musical concert. My first musical concert, I think, was at the Cal State Fairgrounds.
Okay.
And it was, you want to guess, or I'll give you hints if you want.
Musical concert, first one, the Beatles.
Thank you.
No? Was not the Beatles?
I would have loved. No, I was too young. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
You saw Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers as your first concert?
That was my first concert.
Wow. That's incredible.
That I remember. Now, before that, I had seen, of course, the Carpenters growing up.
Okay.
Because we went to Reno a lot. Reno and Lake Tahoe to see shows as a kid.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, they could get us into the showroom, and I would be with my parents, and we saw tons
you
of
had
concerts.
Teeth, which was a magnificent triumph back in Reno days.
I had, we saw a ton of those kinds of concerts.
Okay.
But the first actual
legit
concert
rock show
where I wasn't with my parents and it was a rock and roll show was Tom Petty.
That would be great. That would have been amazing.
It was sensational. And by the way, with time, he only got better right up until the end.
Yeah. I really wanted to see him again, but the clock stops and you don't know. I saw him once at a small venue and he was incredible.
Yeah.
I wish I could have seen him again play a longer set. My first concerts were Journey and the Jay Giles Band.
Oh, wow.
I was like
That's
a toddler. I think I was 2 for 1 and 3 for the other.
I was a massive Journey fan growing up.
I still am a massive Journey fan. Don't Stop Believing is still my favorite song of all time.
I saw them a few years ago. It's probably been 3 or 4 years now. And I love Journey. So maybe my expectations were also set too
Maybe
high.
we should change this show to being a concert review show. From the golden years.
Could be.
Point being, I love music. I'm pretty sure you love music as well because we talk about it a non-zero amount of times.
Endlessly, sure.
I don't believe I have much ability to create music or even really understand it, but I do appreciate it in my own way. Mm-hmm. And this is, of course, much to the chagrin of nearly all my music industry friends, save the one that actually agrees with my shitty music choices. And rock on TVP, he's probably listening. He and I always play the same terrible shit to annoy all of our other music friends. But I have never tried to write a song because it sounds super fucking hard to me, right? It does not sound easy. According to the top 3 performing rights organizations, so that's ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, there are about 2 million songwriters active in the U.S. alone, which kind of blew my mind.
I think there's now another performing rights organization. Irving Azoff started it.
Global Music Rights.
That's it.
GMR. So there are about 2 million songwriters active in the U.S. alone. That number strikes me as super high.
Sure.
And that is a lot of songwriters. For perspective...
Everyone who plays the guitar writes songs.
Totally.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
So for perspective, in May of last year, we counted about 3.5 million retail salespersons, 3.3 million fast food workers, and 3 million nurses. So songwriters isn't far behind, right? Just to give you like a little perspective on this. And it's harder to estimate how much music is released annually, let alone how many songs there are out there in the entire universe. I've seen numbers between 70,000 and 110,000 albums being released per year, and as many as 40,000 tracks being added to Spotify daily, which is about 15-ish million a year if you math it out.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know what's new music and what's older tracks being added to the platform. One approximation I looked at is the number of songs that were streamed at least once. And this number jumped from 33 million in 2017 to 36.3 million in 2018. And that even is 5 years old.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with the order of tens of millions of songs is sort of what I'm getting at, right? It's a big
Steve Allen, the guy who hosted The Tonight Show, the first host of The Tonight Show, used to write a new song every morning.
Wow. Really?
He wrote a song every day.
For the show or just to write a song?
No, just for the practice of writing the song.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I can't even write a joke every day. I can't write a joke once a month.
Most of the songs were terrible, but
Sure.
I mean, you know, it's amazing that you can do that.
Well, if you believe that you just got to fail a bunch in order to find the winner, then you want to get all the failures out of the way.
Oh,
So
for
just
sure.
Write them every day. Okay, so looking at more recent data, in 2022, Rob Jonas, he's the CEO of Luminate, which is the entertainment market monitor and insight provider. It used to be called MRC Data and I think Nielsen Music. He noted that there are over 67 million audio tracks on streaming services today that, at least in the 2022 calendar year, attracted 10 or fewer streams apiece in the year.
Wow.
Right? Now, that's just under half of the entire catalog of about 158 million audio tracks available worldwide. A quarter of those, right? A quarter of the 158 million audio tracks attracted 0 plays that year.
Wow.
That's insane, right?
That hard drive space is free, so who cares?
That's 38 million tracks with 0 plays.
right.
It's just
I guess that does add up.
It's just staggering. Oh, forget about the cost. I'm just thinking about the amount of music that's out there that is basically, there's no light shining on it, right?
Right.
So, okay, so when you've got so many songwriters, 2 million plus just in the U.S., and over 160 million songs, right? I got to believe it's a challenge to avoid writing a song that's too similar to an existing one.
Yeah.
But this begs the question, what does too similar mean?
Oh, I think there are probably rules about those things.
Well, kind of, but here's what's interesting. And there's a very interesting play. Oh yeah, we're gonna get to Ghostbusters. Yeah,
okay.
This is so good. I love the fact that you know that. I would argue that with so many songs and parts of songs that are now live on SoundCloud and YouTube, it seems that it's sort of equal parts impossible to not hear a given song or melody, and yet also impossible to find that needle in the haystack. Right? Like it's all there.
Sure.
But you can't find it all. Certainly nobody's heard it all, right? I don't think any human has heard all 170 million tracks out there.
Right.
I don't think there's like a...
But an AI could.
Oh, sure. And not only could, has, right?
Yeah.
And there has been a steady stream of lawsuits aimed at songwriters by other songwriters who claim that their work was copied or just outright stolen, right? There's a whole discipline. I didn't know this till I was looking at this segment. There's an entire discipline called forensic musicology. We have experts who testify at trials to explain to courts why a song may or may not have been plagiarized.
Okay.
So there's this whole world of this, right? And I suspect the difficulty for songwriters is that they may have copied something inadvertently. Maybe they heard a song years ago and it stuck in the back of their mind, and they really didn't know that they were copying another song.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for these songwriters, intent doesn't get them off the hook for sounding too much like another song.
Of course.
There have been cases where the songwriter just credited the original writer as a co-writer on the song to avoid charges of plagiarism. This would mean that they're giving up a portion of their royalties, even if the co-writer actually had no impact or effect on the songwriter to begin with.
Sure.
And I understand the defensive move, right? I understand you being like, look, I'm going to give a slice of this to you. But it just seems crazy to me, and that this is only going to get worse because you have so many more songs coming out there, right?
And that presumes that the person who's being credited as co-writer, who didn't do the co-writing, who wrote something else that inspired you, is okay with the amount that you've given them.
Is okay in accepting that.
Right.
50%? No, maybe I want 85. Maybe I want 95%.
That is my song, sure.
There have been plenty of recent cases that I think folks are familiar with. Marcus Gray sued Katy Perry in 2014, saying she had plagiarized an 8-note riff from his track Joyful Noise on her track Dark Horse. A jury agreed and awarded him a $2.8 million payout, but a judge later overturned the verdict, saying that the melody was not, quote, particularly unique or rare.
And what qualified the judge to make that assessment?
Great question.
Just because he's a judge? I mean, that's insane.
Upholding that decision, an appeals court said last year the original verdict could have suffocated music creativity, which I thought was a really interesting comment.
Okay.
Earlier this year, 2023, Ed Sheeran defended a second copyright lawsuit in federal court in Manhattan over similarities between his hit Thinking Out Loud and Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On.
Boy, Marvin Gaye has been one who's been tapped left and right. He's been such a huge influence on everyone.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Yeah. U.S. District Judge Louis Stanton dismissed the case, ruling that the parts of Let's Get It On Sheeran was accused of infringing were too common for copyright protection. He went on to find that the combination of chord progression and harmonic rhythm in Gaye's song was a, quote, basic musical building block that was too common to merit copyright protection.
Interesting.
So, right? And that was just this year. You mentioned the one that I think is one of my favorites, those favorites that I know of, and I had just discovered this recently, was that shortly after Ghostbusters' release in 1984, Huey Lewis sued Ray Parker Jr. for plagiarism, alleging that Parker had copied the melody, primarily the bass line, from Lewis's 1983 song, I Want a New Drug.
Sure.
The case was settled out of court in 1985 for an undisclosed sum and a confidentiality agreement that prohibited discussion of the case.
Right.
According to Parker, There were several lawsuits at the time because, quote, when you sell that many records, I think everybody wants to say that they wrote the song.
But in that case, I think Huey Lewis really did write the song.
Well, yeah, because in 2004, there's an article in Premiere Magazine where the filmmakers admitted to using the song I Want a New Drug as temporary background music in many scenes. They also noted that they had offered to hire Huey Lewis in the News to write the main theme, but the band had declined. The filmmakers then gave film footage with Lewis's song in the background to Parker to aid him in writing the theme song.
Yeah, sure.
So kind of hard to wiggle out of that one. As an interesting aside in this story, Parker later sued Lewis for breaching the confidentiality agreement in a 2001 episode of VH1's Behind the Music by reasserting that Parker stole the song. And regarding the case against Lewis, Parker said, quote, I got a lot of money out of that, which I just think is kind of tickles me, right? That it's like they went back and forth, signed a confidentiality agreement, and then, Huey said something on Behind the Music and had to pay some of that money back to Parker. Sure. Anyway. Okay, so my point is...
In general, I think confidentiality agreements are for the birds.
Terrible.
I mean,
my point is that there are plenty of these, quote, your songs sound like my song lawsuits.
Right.
And I get it. Nobody wants to have their IP stolen. But there is, by definition, a finite number of combinations that you can put notes together into, right? Like, there's only...
Well, it's got to be a huge number.
Well, yeah, of course, right? It's a super large number. And the ones that, quote, sound good are a much, much smaller subset.
Okay.
So we are now in this era when millions of songwriters upload music to the internet. Just about any song can be plucked from obscurity by a TikTok teen, and it seems inevitable that the same melodies are going to end up in different songs, right? Yeah. That's sort of the point that I'm trying to make. And songwriters now have to be super cautious since plagiarism lawsuits are flying around, and the winner in court is usually the one you'd least suspect. One of the reasons why it's so tough to defend a copyright lawsuit is because the court now considers a melody just a sequence of pitches. In the Dark Horse case, the jury initially found that she had infringed upon the copyright of Marcus Gray, even though Perry insisted she had never heard of the song or the rapper himself.
Sure.
For some musicians, musicologists, and lawyers, the verdict felt very scary. Could the world run out of original melodies? Now, these two guys in particular.
Well, sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, no. If you think of it as like it is finite, right? It's a finite resource.
It has to be a finite number.
Damon Rael and Noah Rubin were two of these worried musicians. They developed a program that recorded every possible interesting melody via MIDI to a hard drive, but not for the reasons that you might think. Rael is unique in that he's a musician, a programmer, and an attorney who understands how copyright works.
Well, that's a deadly combination.
It was his idea to exhaust all possible melodies, and in so doing, protect musicians from being sued for copying songs they don't remember hearing. Along with Rubin, his partner on this, sort of his programming friend, they committed this vast library of melodies to a hard drive, which automatically bestowed copyright on all of them as soon as the melodies were placed on a, quote, fixed, tangible medium.
Of course.
Now, this might initially seem sinister, but the two put all of these melodies into the public domain.
Yeah, and that's ingenious is what that is.
And this is the part that, like, I saw this, I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
In fact, anybody can download the works and the program the two used in order to take the process further at allthemusic.info, which I will put a link to in the show notes.
That's really cool.
Right? So they basically said, okay, we're going to take some subset of what's possible, and we're going to make this all PD, all public domain, and put it out there for everyone to share, which is kind of brilliant. And I want to talk a little bit today about how they did it and then what could come out of this. And if you take just the 88 notes on a piano, right, for instance, in a 12-note sequence, you get 216 sextillion melodies.
Hang on, carry the one.
And that's only within the sort of the Western tradition, right, in which these particular frequency ranges are considered notes. So that's a big number, finite number, big number. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if you're talking about Western popular music and the range in which hit songs are made, that is a radically restricted domain. And within it, the number of melodies is far more comprehensible. For example, there are only 243 combinations of a sequence of 3 notes up and down and 5 notes wide that most pop songs fall into. So as you can see, it's extremely easy to copy another song without even knowing it.
Sure.
Popular music tends to use a more limited range of notes than an entire piano. And Rael and Rubin figured they would cover just a single octave, which is what most pop songs use.
Reasonable.
Rhythms were not considered because they are not legally applicable.
Interesting.
They'd wanted to generate all possible melodies on the piano, but after some prototyping, settled for 12-note melodies in a popular range that Rael had seen implicated in copyright litigation, the octave ascending from middle C. Most pop melodies run fewer than 12 notes, and if you generated every possible melody with just the 8 notes of the C scale, that would be 8 to the 12 melodies, which is nearly 69 billion.
Hang on. Yes.
So that's a big number, right? But it's a thinkable number. And remember, there are already 160 million songs streamable out there. It's a thinkable number.
It's thinkable, I guess. It's still enormous.
I don't know, man. How much storage do you have on your machine right now?
On my computer,
yes, sir.
Like 4 terabytes is nothing.
That is a much, much bigger number, 4 terabytes, than 69 billion.
Okay, but I can't fit a song into 1 byte.
It's a very shitty song. You can. It's just Real and Rubin hatched a plot to create software that would write every melody, at least within this popular range. It wouldn't be unlike dialing every possible telephone number, right? So if you were to start with like 111, 111, and then you just work all your way up. So effectively, they would be doing, do, re, and going all the way up through all of these songs. That was their concept.
Sounds awful, but yes.
It does sound awful. But some of them, hey, monkeys on a typewriter, right? Some of them are going to be good.
That's what they're literally doing it, all except for not monkeys. They're doing it, procedurally.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of monkeying going on here. You'll like this next part. I put this in just for you, Mr. Parker. Even to complete this set, Rubin had to switch programming languages from Python to Rust.
I wonder why.
He said, because it gave us the speed increase that he needed.
Oh, sure.
Python had too much overhead, was running too slow.
I'm a big Rust fan.
I know you're a Rust fan, which is why I put that in there.
Correct.
I mean, he could have gone straight to C, but he'd still be debugging the fucking memory allocation issues that he'd have with it. Okay, so soon these guys had a hard drive filled with almost 69 billion melodies. And in a conversation with Adam Neely, a YouTuber who helped spread the word about this project, Real alluded to previous copyright thought experiments. And he said, quote, "This has been a concept that has been discussed," he said, "but no one has ever brute forced it in this way." Yeah. By doing this, these guys hope to actually put an end to what many consider frivolous copyright lawsuits like the ones I mentioned previously.
Sure.
In just about all infringement cases, a jury rules against a songwriter if it's possible they had access to a previous work somehow. That means that a songwriter might accidentally copy a song that they've heard and forgotten about, or even write it independently without ever hearing it, yet still be liable for plagiarism.
Paul McCartney, when he wrote Yesterday, walked around with that melody in his head. He didn't have words to it yet.
Sure.
And was thinking, where have I heard this melody? Where have I heard this melody?
Really? Oh, really?
Yeah, and kept asking everybody, where have you heard that? What is this song? What is this song? What is this song? Because the melody just came to him. Eventually, everybody was like, yeah, no, never heard it.
Just release it, and they'll come out and tell you.
But they didn't.
That's crazy. That's really funny. Kind of the opposite version of
the
this.
words he used, he didn't have the lyrics Yesterday yet. So he said he would sing it to scrambled eggs.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to start singing this now every time I make my kids scrambled eggs. Thank you for making their life a little bit worse. I appreciate that.
I can.
For a little perspective, being a part of a lawsuit for copyright infringement is not trivial, right? It costs up to $2 million whether you win or not. And these guys are these two, right? Real and Rubin, they're trying to bring some reason back into the process by saying that all songs have already been copyrighted and in the public domain.
I love that they did this. I think this is so smart.
To my knowledge, this hasn't been used as a legal argument yet. So it's still up to a court to decide.
Stand by.
If it's the case. Yeah, exactly. Now, in The Atlantic, there was an article that I stole most of this from. Alexis Madrigal goes on to say that Real and Rubin's work is provocative on several levels. One, it raises some of the same issues about originality that haunt many discussions on creativity. A recent 99% Invisible podcast, which is another great show you guys should listen to, talks about the song Who Let the Dogs Out? And this proved an especially evocative example of the possibility of unintentional duplication. Ben Sisto, who is an artist who spent a decade tracing the origins of the woof, woof, woof hook.
Yeah.
Right? In the song.
Yeah.
He found variation after variation of that horrible song throughout musical history, some seemingly connected by a chain of transmission, others not at all. And he said, quote, "One of the biggest myths we tell ourselves about art is that it is made by individuals, and that myth is what the art market is propped up on." Sisto told the show's host he's come to believe instead that it is impossible to reliably distinguish what people invent from what they borrow.
Sure.
And he said, quote, "I think that all these ideas apply to every piece of creative work ever made. And it's just about the very nature of art and life." So on another level, the Melody Project asked some interesting questions about machine creation. Is writing some software to output MIDI melodies to a hard drive the same as if you'd created the song, played it on your xylophone, and uploaded it to SoundCloud? Did Real and Rubin free music from restriction, or did they infringe on millions of copyrights?
Well, they had to infringe on millions of copyrights at the same time.
Well, that's what I saw. So my read on this is that at the very least, these works highlight the long-standing flaws of the current music copyright system, but legal experts were decidedly less enthusiastic about whether it would actually help musicians in a live fire copyright case.
Yeah.
So Cristelia Garcia, she's a law professor at the University of Colorado, she saw things in mostly the same way. She said it's an interesting thought experiment, and she thinks it does a good job of exposing the absurd point we've reached in the music copyright infringement world. but she didn't think the project could prevent copyright infringement suits over melodies. She said, quote, "I am not at all convinced it does what they hope it will do, i.e. give artists a free pass out of infringement suits, since so many of their melodies are almost certainly already owned by someone else."
Sure.
Now I look at that and I go, okay, for the ones that are already used, sure.
Right.
Whoever had the prior art, right, could argue that they had it first. So it seems to me this will help for the countless number of melodies that have yet to be used. It does still leave a question mark around the ones that have been already used. But I look at that and I go, well, isn't that the whole point? Isn't the whole point to just say, like, it's all already out there? And just because somebody happened to come up with those 4 notes in that order first doesn't mean they should be entitled to it forevermore.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I have mixed feelings about that, but I do love that they put into the public domain all songs going forward that have not been created with this, so that's really, really cool.
And these guys are expanding their range of notes and starting to account for rhythm. Ultimately, they hope that legislation, not coding projects, can reform how copyright works in the US. And I think that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to use these projects as a way to get copyright reform, ultimately.
Sure.
Real said he does not want to see their melody project adjudicated in court. He said a better place to do it, quote, is in Congress to modify the copyright law in a way that makes sense, which I totally get. That's what they're, it's almost like performance art in trying to show the world, hey, this is a mess. We need to fix it. I found the story fascinating on its own, but I found it to be an interesting and arguably easier to understand precursor to what I think is likely to come around AI copyright discussions. Because while maybe this is dry on its surface, we're going to need some policy around copyright in the brave new world of AI. Attribution, recognition, compensation, it all needs to get ironed out and quickly, because that train is moving a hell of a lot faster than any music train has ever moved.
Sure. You already have people in neck deep in lawsuits around AI attribution.
Absolutely. And I see so many parallels to this, right? Like, and that's been where I think this gets really interesting, even if you just take out AI for a second. And you go, okay, well, I heard a song and it may have shaped the art that you created. That was the point that Sisto had made, where it's hard to remove the borrowing from the invention when it comes to any sort of artistic work.
Yeah.
So you're going to be influenced by these other things, and that's standing on the shoulders of giants. I get if you just knock off the same thing, that's should not be allowed and direct plagiarism. But man, there's a pretty wide gray area in the middle, and that's without AI.
Right.
So now with AI, that to me gets a lot more sticky.
I don't know how any of that's going to shake out. I'm a bystander in the whole thing, and I've heard arguments on all sides of it, and I am as confused as anyone has ever been.
Well, I would disagree with you that you're a bystander, because you, sir, are now a social influencer.
Okay.
And we have...
I am watching these lawsuits fly left and right, and I sit
pretty
going,
nuts.
yeah, that makes sense. And then the other person makes their argument, and I go, yeah, that makes sense. It's like...
I get it. No, I get it. I want people to be creative, and I think that's why so much of this IP
and I want people to be
exists.
incentivized to be creative. I want them to get paid for their creativity. Of all the people in the world who I want to get paid first, it's the artists.
Totally.
Yes.
But like I look at the patent system and I go, man, that was designed to protect people who had ideas to allow them to bring them to market. But man, has that been abused beyond that.
Oh yeah, that's totally
right?
gone off the rails.
So like, I just feel like we all need to sit down and go, look.
I can fix the patent system very easily.
Yeah.
You actually have to use your patent.
Yeah, totally.
You have to actually bring your patent to market. And if you're not, then you're a patent troll and forget it. You shouldn't have a patent.
Yeah.
It should evaporate.
No, I appreciate it. I really don't think it's that easy. I think you could bring it to market and be like, I own the patent on website cookies, and I will charge them $1 million for anybody that uses them. Like, you can achieve the same thing. So how do you put guardrails on that? Yeah. I don't really know. It's hard. But I know it's fucked, and I know that it should be made better. And I love the fact
By the way, the early guys of the internet, the guys who invented ASCII, let's say, or, a zillion other things, they just threw it all into the public domain.
I know.
They just threw everything into the public domain pell-mell. It was
the guys who invented ASCII. There was no fucking internet.
We couldn't have computers without those people throwing their things into the public domain.
I know. Well, it was all educational institutions, right? It was all all of that development came from them, and then you had commercialization that came after that or alongside that
later,
right? So
yeah.
I appreciate that, right? Like somebody came up with a transistor, although that wasn't really institutional. That was private when the transistor came along. But sure, like you go back to the early RFC standards. Those were every single one of those was written by someone at an educational institution. Everyone, right?
Yeah.
Most of them at ISI right here in LA. And now you don't have that as the case anymore. Things move a lot faster and are commercialized. I totally get it. I still think we need a solution for what's going on with copyright. And it's interesting to see that music was
copyright and patent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't
all IP.
Patent.
I should say all
important.
IP, all IP protection.
Yeah.
because it's a mess. I'd argue the patent's in worse shape than copyright, but they're both in bad shape. And how do you fix that? I don't know. Getting back to the point.
Copyright issue only recently this year because of AI has, caught on fire. Patents before that were
smoldering for a long time.
Like a much bigger disaster.
Yeah. And I'm not claiming that it's easy, but I think we have to figure it out. I think we owe it to
we're gonna figure it out
before the singularity gets in?
Absolutely. No. We're gonna figure it out in court. We're gonna have slugfests in court figuring this out.
I wonder,
and the court rulings are gonna be a disaster. They're gonna be a mess. There's gonna be some that rule some way and some that rule another way. And eventually it will all get roughly sorted out.
But I'd also argue that it's really far behind. Like really far behind. And that's what I don't know. Like, okay, you're saying it's a slugfest and could figure it out. How much of that is going to be bells that we can't unring, right? How much of that's going to be codified?
A big chunk.
A big chunk of it, right?
Of course.
Is kind of fascinating. So anyway.
I mean, think about when advertising came along, when print media came along and started putting in ads, and there was no such thing as truth in advertising laws. And people would just make things up for what their products did.
Totally.
I mean, you had to have slugfests in courtrooms to sort all that out.
Aren't we back to that though? Like,
it seems like it doesn't.
I mean, I feel like we've gotten a little far away
for some reason in politics, it's still legal. I mean,
that's what I don't understand.
You can just make things up in political ads with complete immunity. I don't really know how that works.
That's what I'm saying. Like
but most other advertising, no. If you can't say that Coca-Cola cures your leprosy or whatever you want to say about.
Okay, first of all, it was Pepsi, and it did cure my leprosy. Okay. So let's just get that on record right now. Yeah. There's like a T-shirt going around that's like alternative facts related. This is something like science doesn't care about your opinion.
Right.
Something
Sure.
That, which I always think is great. It's like, okay, you can have an opinion on, I don't know, physics, but then physics is going to do what fucking physics does. It doesn't really care about what you think it's going to do. It's like, these are the rules of the world around us. If you found the sort of melody brute force story interesting,
I did.
I would encourage our listeners to check out Damien Reel's TEDx talk. I'll put the link in the show notes. He gives some great examples that really help color in the issue, including the Tom Petty, Sam Smith.
Yeah.
He kind of sings it out. It's really cool. There's a bunch of those that he highlights, and it's a good talk. It's only 15, 20 minutes long.
I haven't heard it, but I look forward to it.
But it's a good talk. Yeah, I'll put the link in the notes. Anyway, that was my bit on the things.
That's your bit on, that was your bit on the things? Is that really?
That was my bit on the things.
That's your line to summarize? That was your bit on the things, huh?
I've got medium COVID, okay? Would you just back the fuck up?
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, CJ's got to get his bit on the thing.
I have no idea. This was my segment on copyright. Generative, I don't know.
Have you seen or read anything good this last week?
Yes. I feel like for the first time in this show's history, I have something that is absolutely perfect for this part of the show where I always waffle.
Oh, okay.
So as I mentioned at the top of the show, I've had COVID for the past week. So I've had to sequester and isolate myself in my little home office media room.
So you've had nothing but time to watch TV and consume media.
I mean, I had to do some stuff for the show and some other stuff. But I did watch Severance, season 1.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Tip to tail. And it's fucking great.
Yeah.
I initially watched the first 2 episodes when I got COVID the last time, a year and a half ago. I stopped watching it to say, I think my wife would like this. I want to watch it with her. I tried watching it with her a couple months ago. She was so bored in the first episode.
Oh, no.
She's like, just turn it off. Oh, yeah, she hated it.
Oh, okay.
It was too slow. She did not like it.
Different things for different people.
I wanted her to watch a second episode. She wouldn't. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to watch the whole thing. And I watched it tip to tail. Man, that show is great. I don't want to give away anything to anybody, but I would strongly suggest you all go watch it. If you like the show, I think you would like that show. It's on Apple TV Plus, and it's excellent. I'm very excited. I think season 2 is going to drop sometime next year. Looking forward to binging that next time I have COVID.
Super cool. And congratulations on getting your first real rec-in.
My first real rec-in? Oh, I know. Isn't it great? It only took us, 49 episodes?
Yeah.
I'm fast. I'm just an overperformer, aren't I?
You are an overperformer.
Anyway, how about you? What'd you watch?
Nayad, Annette Bening plays swimmer Diana Nayad, 3 decades after giving up marathon swimming in exchange for a career as a sports journalist at the age of 60. Diana becomes obsessed with completing an epic swim that has always eluded her, the 110-mile trek from Cuba to Florida. Determined to become the first person to finish the swim without a shark cage, Diana goes on a thrilling 4-year journey with her best friend and coach, Bonnie Stoll, played to perfection by Jodie Foster. This is really good.
Okay, wait a minute. I was pretty interested, and you talked about the 60-year-old doing a 110-mile swim. I was like, oh, this sounds super interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm into this.
Oh, no, it's incredible.
And then you threw in the bit about the shark cage.
Oh.
And her not using a shark cage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, a what now?
Because it's considered an assisted swim if she swims with a shark cage.
I get it.
So she had to swim without a shark cage.
Yeah, it's assisted in keeping you alive.
Oh, yeah. But
how does that work?
But they also have to deal with the fact that sharks will come to where she is.
So
that's an issue.
Are
That's
there
a real
snipers?
issue.
Don't tell me. I'll just find out.
Yeah, I won't tell you. Watch the show. It's
how does
incredible.
it work when you have a shark cage? Do they like troll the shark cage and you're swimming in the shark cage? But
100%.
Like
the sharks don't know that there's a cage there. They just keep banging it.
Okay, that's weird. That's a different episode. But how do they pull the cage and you not be in the wake of the boat? Like that just sounds so complicated to
the
me.
cage is
in
built
front of the
as
boat?
part of the boat. It's enormous.
Okay, and it's like in front of the boat.
So you're not touching it. You're not touching it.
Yeah, sure.
You're swimming, but you're
But it's got to be in front of the boat.
cage.
So it's behind the boat. You're in the wake of the boat.
It's both. It's the whole length of the boat.
Oh, it's like alongside.
Well, but it's like almost two boats. There's almost like two sides to it.
Wow, that's
because you think
cool.
about how big that cage has to be, so she never accidentally touches it.
Did they cover this in the film?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. All right, I'm looking for what's it playing on?
Naiad. It's on Netflix now. Make sure you see it. It's great.
I'm gonna check that out, and maybe before the next show I'll have comments on it. No problem.
So good.
Let's see how this COVID
That
works.
is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. This is on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Stu Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, our favorite Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
That was his thing on the thing. Podcastindex.org. Special thanks to our floor director, Martina Chaconis.
Thank you, Martina. We'll be every Thursday morning for more things. Please join us. I used all of my brain cells in that segment, and they're gone now.
You spent them.
They're just gone.
No question.